World of Darkness is a very funny setting because right now, the topic of demons. What is a demon in World of Darkness? It is a catch-all term that is thrown around very often. While WoD does not adhere purely to like the Christian dogma, demon is often just something you can throw at like an evil spirit or a creepy evil entity, but WoD likes to play a lot in that realm of technically and add a lot more detail to it. Is this a demon? Maybe, or technically speaking, it could be a wormbane, which is essentially acts the exact same way as a demon, but is a completely different thing. Is it a demon, or is it, I don't know, an extra-planar, extra-dimensional entity that's trying to come kill you? Demon the Fallen, many times, I see thrown around as kind of equivalent to Wraith the Oblivion, Changeling the Dreaming, some of the other more niche like setting and game lines. I personally don't fully hold this view, and it is not due to quality. I am super honest when I say this. I think Demon the Fallen is probably one of the coolest concepts that is executed excellently. Something that's sometimes rare for WoD. It is really tightly written, and in the best way possible, it feels like a second draft. This is because it was. A fun little factoid, I found Reddit posts and Reddit comments of one of the writers for Demon the Fallen, and he talks about how they had to axe the original concept and rewrote it, but it feels like that. It feels like something that's been worked on a lot. I have two little reasons I hold the opinion I do. First, this is a game that's meant to have a shelf life. It is a game that ran from 2003 to 2005, ended with the Apocalypse timeline, the Time of Judgment. And it is a game that, unless you do some rewrites, exists in Revised Edition lore, which I'll get to in a little bit. I say this because I think it is better to treat Demon the Fallen as a completed piece of art, rather than, I don't know, something that's like a live service or something that should be endlessly tapped into. I will talk about a lot of this at the end, but for now, let's just get into the lore. But there's one real big positive for there just being such a short game, is that I don't have to deal with edition hopping and retcons. This is all one and done. Largely, the core book lays it all out pretty well. What even is Demon the Fallen about? Quite obviously, right on the tin, you're playing as demons, with a lot of technicalities. So, like I said, this exists in Revised Edition. Revised Edition is hot off the repercussions of an event known as the Week of Nightmares, 1999, to give you a crash course. In 1999, the antediluvian for Clan Ravnos, he has a lot of names. In this, he's Zapsathura. He woke up in India. This is, in my personal opinion, the equivalent of Demon Primarch Angron or some similarly powerful big scary monster landing in India. Through a lot of fighting and some magic space lasers, don't worry about it. Zapsathura was taken down. However, at the same time in the underworld, there was a fella, a void engineer mage known as Xerxes Jones. He was playing with a relic weapon. What is a relic weapon? Well, it is the memory of a nuclear warhead. In the underworld and in the Shadowlands, it's kind of a memory reflection of our material world. Xerxes Jones wanted to see what happens if he tried to nuke Oblivion, the titular Oblivion from Wraith the Oblivion. It is basically a void of unending and entropy and death. Picture this, in an afterlife, if you fall into this void, sucks, you cease to exist. You are unmade, there's no more afterlife to, you are gone. At the same time as Xerxes Jones doing this whole shit, there was the Smiling Lord. There's a whole war going on in the underworld at the same time, it's complicated. The Smiling Lord decided to launch soul nukes at the memory of the first city of Enoch, the vampire city. The first vampire city got nuked. That explosion nuked Xerxes Jones' bomb. And because of that, the sixth Great Maelstrom happened. Great Maelstrom is when the Oblivion starts churning and going crazy and releases a bunch of spooky, scary creatures. At this moment, underneath the Shadowlands is a place known as the Abyss. The Abyss is where the fallen angels, biblically, were sealed. It's like hell, but different. This event freed all of the fallen, and they got out and now are able to hang out in the real world. With caveat, this event had giant repercussions for Revised Edition and its lore, because this is an edition where magic is a lot harder to deal with, umbral travel is way harder to deal with, just being outwardly supernatural is tougher and it's way grittier and a bit more grounded. That was the point of Revised. As it went on, this stopped being a thing. 20th anniversary, which is best viewed as an edition that is the best ofs all put into one, kind of operates in the perspective of, has this horrible event happened? Has it kind of happened, but it's getting better? Or did it just not happen? I like the second one. I like the idea that it did happen because I like this lore event and I like the repercussions. I just like the idea that it's starting to recover and stabilize, but man, oh man, it took like 20 years to do so. But that is what I mean when this is a very revised edition game line, because for the demons lore-wise to get out of the abyss, this event needs to happen. So the Fallen. The Fallen are fallen angels. This is about the whole rebellion against God led by Lucifer. I'm talking full Paradise Lost. Like, that is just what happened. But more complicated because it's WoD. These angels that rebelled now can hang out in the material world. The problem is they are not of Earth, so they actually need an anchor to stabilize themselves and exist. Who's the best anchor? People. So they possess humans, often humans who align with the house that they come from, which is basically the class system. It's like a clan, a tribe. It's what you pick to get your fun toys. Each of them have little criterias of who fits best, but they'll find someone basically at their wit's end. Somebody who is like currently overdosing on drugs, somebody that's deep in a coma, somebody who's literally about to kill themselves. It is people literally at their worst, and in this moment they can possess a person. It is not explicitly stated really what this possession kind of entails and what it means. It is very like Mummy the Resurrection, where you have the spell of life and it is two souls merging into one. Like, another interpretation is that you are basically taking the body at the moment of death, so you are just taking a shell that now exists on Earth, and because you are now in this human form, human things just make more sense to you, and you have these memories of being a fallen angel, but also this human's memories, and you're now in their life. There are other interpretations where you're not taking it right when they die, you're kind of taking it before, and so you're like shunting a human soul out of its body, so you're essentially committing murder. It depends. I think there are different interpretations you can play around with, but the main point is that you are an angel inhabiting a human body. You are gifting this human body now with these really cool powers, but you are now dealing with the mundanity of a human life and a human existence in a perspective you have now gained, because as a heavenly creature, or at least once a heavenly creature, it is still a sort of alien perspective. Even worse, because you've been in the abyss for like millennia, being tortured in your misery and wallowing in despair, or having your heart harden and become awful. So, I think we should talk about why did the angels fall in the first place. I imagine that through just pure cultural osmosis, a lot of you know the bare bone basics of the original story. 1/3 of heaven allied themselves with Lucifer, who in creation around Adam and Eve, he had an issue with how shit was being done by God. He stepped in and as such was cursed, and all of them fell, and now they live in hell. I do want to state this right at the front, because I know there are people who have an issue with this as like a trend or whatever. This is not a setting where I'm gonna be like, oh, secretly God was evil the whole time. It's not that. It is more that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, I think is the best way I can describe it. And the reason for the fall, not every person might have had perfect intentions as time went on, but Lucifer certainly did. And to be completely honest, you should take World of Darkness lore as very perspective driven. This is the perspective of demons, and so they're going to have a lot more of a charitable read. If you take Demon the Fallen's lore purely at its face, and like the Time of Judgment timeline stuff, Lucifer's like genuinely a really good guy for us humans. Every single action Lucifer Morningstar took is out of personal interest in helping humanity. But let's tell the story of WoD, and I'm gonna have to speed run this because it's really extensive actually. God made the angels and gave them all individual roles to fulfill for creation. I'll get into the houses later, but essentially the angelic houses each had a charge, and it's something they watched over, helped make, and God had his plan for humanity. All the angels were super down. They liked this idea. First, of course, starting with Adam and Eve. The angels saw, especially Lucifer, saw that inside each human was a literal spark of divinity. There is a personal touch that God put in each of them that has immense potential to become so much greater by utilizing this divine perfection inside of them. However, God mandated there would be zero guidance for humanity. Humans would have to discover whatever this was on their own, and all the angels and all of heaven wouldn't have zero contact. Lucifer didn't really like this. He thought there was a huge contradiction in the idea of spending so much time creating what are meant to be these perfect creatures, giving them free will, and doing nothing to help them. It got worse though with another angel known as Aramel. Aramel had a vision. His vision foretold a great calamity happening to humans. To put this in real perspective, In heaven, time just works differently. Shit takes way longer. And for these angels, they like truly loved humanity and the project they were working on. A lot of them didn't like the idea that they did all this work and then they don't get to, I don't know, hang out with humans. They don't get to at least meet them. They don't get to help them along. It's like having a kid, getting it all set up to be ready, and then telling the parents, nah, fend for themselves, 6-year-old. That is how they felt. This hit with the event known as the Great Debate. This was an event where RML gathered a fuck ton of confidants, largely from all the other different houses, and they debated what they should do. Yeah, there was this huge catastrophe on the horizon, something that they could maybe prevent. They also just didn't like the idea of humans failing on their journey to this divine perfection, so they interceded. A lot of representatives of these houses, mainly Lucifer at its front, they decided to go down to the Garden of Eden and chat with Adam and Eve. It was not a temptation or a fall that was with an apple and a serpent. It was a choice. Each of them offered help and information with complete understanding that they are allowed to say no. Adam and Eve said yes. And as time goes on, again, time in heaven and earth is different. So early humanity, the reason civilizations happened and a lot of tech development happened is because of the actions of these angels helping them along. Especially Lucifer, who is like the most dogged about this idea and concept of helping humanity. This, in turn, cut off the humans from faith in God's light. It became much more of a bigger issue, alongside a giant war in heaven, as when it was found out what happened and that they broke away, a real rebellion stood. Lucifer with his armies, his generals, they fought tooth and nail. But when humans were cut off from God's light, there is a main resource of faith, literal faith, that angels need. If you can't get it from God, you can get it from people. But when that was cut off, the fallen had literally nothing they could do. And as punishment, all of the fallen that survived the war, except for Lucifer Morningstar, were thrown into the abyss. Lucifer was allowed to wander the earth eternally, but his power was drastically reduced. This is something we don't know why God did, but in this form, Lucifer still did his damnedest to help. In fact, it didn't work out good like every single time. A little earlier in the timeline around when the war was happening, they tried to take 10 humans and supercharge them with like godlike power. It went horribly. Their experiments with like the Nephilim went horribly. This one, this most latest one in the timeline, Lucifer taught humans how to do sorcery and summoning. The problem is, he taught them how to summon demons from the abyss, and the first demons that were summoned out of it were not very happy about it, and also were completely fucked. In the abyss is essentially a bunch of these divine creatures cut off from God and tortured with their guilt and shame, and this can either become like true, genuine emotional pain that you deal with constantly, or in the face of it, you double down. And this is where I get to talk about two main resources. I kind of talked about the first one, faith. Faith is a resource that angels need to do their shit. However, they physically cannot get it from God anymore, and humans have just way less than they used to. How do you get faith? You have to take it from another person. It is a finite resource, from people especially. So how do you get it? You have to be offered it willingly. You can make pacts, you can be worshipped, you can make a pact and then rip all of the available faith instead of just one, which will kill the person to do it, or you can reveal your true form. Basically, for faith to be accrued, you have to reveal that you are unquestionably a divine or demonic being. Because this brings us to the other concept, torment. Torment is essentially spiritual PTSD as like a stat, measured from 1 to 10. And I do really like the concept of torment. I think it is a really neat mechanic, because torment is something you get by being selfish, by being bad, by being evil, and you get rid of it by doing selfless acts. Torment affects how your character works. You have a bunch of cool powers, a bunch of cool abilities. I'll get into the lores later. But these powers are actually affected by torment. If you have high torment and you try to do a power, there's an example in the book. This example is an angel being hunted by devil hunters. And she tries to use this power that is like the voice of God. It's basically a version of Jesse Custer's ability from Preacher. Great comic series, you should read it. But because she has high torment, this ability instead of just being, I'm opening you up to listen to me, I am forcing you to pay attention to me. This voice of God then does physical damage to the devil hunters and everyone around her. Torment charges these abilities to have really high collateral damage, just are worse or just more evil. And as a fallen, you have access to what is known as your apocalypse form. This is your true divine self. You have really high torment, it is monstrous and demonic. If it's really low, it is angelic, and the reaction you'll get will change according to each position. So with high torment, getting faith is something you are stealing from people, and with really low torment, it is something that is you are genuinely trying to do good. There is as well the hypothetical torment 0. This is Golconda. Fully, it is redemption. It is fully stated that it is uncertain if this thing exists. It's a hypothetical state. However, if it did happen to an angel, it is an end of character thing, like Golconda should be, because your character won, dude. You won, and now your win state is like cuts you off from the rest of the fucking game, because you can't have fallen rules if you're back to a normal angel. That's how it goes. It's up to you as a storyteller if this is a absolute pipe dream or if it's real. But my point being, the first creatures that were summoned out of the abyss that Lucifer taught the humans are now known as the Earthbound. The Earthbound are really high torment angels, and a lot of them are actually some of like the top dogs in Lucifer's army who in the abyss festered. There were a lot of people in the rebellion against heaven who didn't like the idea that Lucifer was showing. They thought his ideas were hypocritical, or at least really unappealing, because they saw if Lucifer fully achieved his goals of making humanity ascend, then there was a future where humans ruled over the angels and ruled over the fallen. A lot of them didn't like it, and a lot of the archdukes and like the main generals are where you get Asmodeus, Belial, Aegon, Azrael, like the big dogs. As well, we know in your Zamiski lore, Kupala might be an Earthbound, or he's a worm spirit, who knows. The Earthbound are creatures who are driven mad by torment. At their incredibly high torment, it is something that actively fucks with their nature. Their incredibly high torment level actually makes them fully incompatible to possessing humans. They really inhabit like items known as reliquaries. If you want a cool demonic sentient sword that talks to you and tells you to do evil, it can be an Earthbound. They made their power by getting humans to worship them in evil cults, which is extra funny. Maybe that's how the Bali worked. If they were actually worshiping devils, it would be an Earthbound. Earthbound are the demons we think of when you think of the idea of a demon. So Lucifer had a plan. His plan was to introduce rationality and logic and science, but largely skepticism, because he believed he could deprive the Earthbound of worship. It is really funny as I'm thinking and like talking about it, this isn't my script. Lucifer in Demon the Fallen is just a lower stakes Emperor of Mankind. It's just if the Emperor of Mankind fucked up, like a lot, he did in 40k lore, but like, if he was bad at his job. However, this did kind of work, and it's just really funny to me that the idea of like, this science is actually made by Satan is true in World of Darkness. What a concept. I love this setting. But this put a lot of the Earthbound into like a dormant state because they just weren't receiving any faith anymore. But before I get into the actual characters you can be playing, I want to pause and make sure this is clear. Demon the Fallen, if you take it as like what are the main themes and concepts of the game, is like so human. To put it in a fun, wine mom quote, it is kind of the game of hurt people. The whole push with like torment and how it works. A lot of the core aspects of playing a Fallen on Earth is how do you deal with supernatural PTSD? Are you a person who bottles it all up, and the only way it comes out is you lash out at people, especially mortals that are significantly weaker than you, and people you blame for like the actions you might have done? You need a scapegoat. You can't blame yourself. You didn't make a mistake. It was everyone else. Or are you like truly racked with guilt? Are you trying to show that you deserve redemption? You regret everything you did, but like, man, the bitterness keeps coming out of you. These thoughts of like pain, grief, and regret literally harnessed in like a hell-like setting and as a divine being, now in a human body, which gives you access to a lot of these human tools of thinking through your thoughts and your trauma and having this human perspective. It's a game where you're playing very traumatized, very powerful creatures. In fact, each house, again, like your class, your clan, your tribe, whatever, each of them has a weakness. This is not like a clan bane. There is really not any mechanical impacts of these weaknesses, but these weaknesses are roleplay aspects of just how does each house view the fall and how do they view their role and what is just the common temperament a lot of them have. As well as one of the main powers, this is something you do spend your faith points. It's your lore. Your lore are magics. Each house gives you access to 3 lores. Each of them are pretty fun. But yeah, I will be showing screenshots of like the wiki only because the PDF copy I have is just kind of scuffed a little. I don't know, it's harder to read, and so if you want to get an understanding of these powers, I picked the one that's clear to read. I did double check all of it, so this isn't just wiki hallucinations, it is accurate. The only thing that is different is the wiki screenshots do not show the exact mechanical stuff. The actual core book tells you the mechanics, the resources, the dice rolls, all that. The houses are that organization of similar creatures that God made and gave them all similar tasks, and each of these houses were then kind of twisted a little bit once they fell. I will be telling you them in order of creation. The Namaru were created first, and these angels were charismatic messengers and charged with the power to wield God's voice and spread it across creation. Upon the fall, they were later known as the devils. The devils are the charismatic demon. It is, to put it in vampire terms, they're the Ventro. They are known to do a little bit of pact making and corruption. It is the devil in a suit that shakes your hand at the crossroads. That's what this is. Their house lores are the lore of the Celestials. This is that magical ability to impart God's will and word. If you want to do, again, Jesse Custer's thing, that is this power. It's a devil power. But it also lets you smite a guy in holy fire, so that's fun. Speaking of, we have the lore of fire. Do you want to do pyromancy? It's pyromancy. It's full elemental fire magic. And then the lore of radiance. This is a power that's created after the fall and is essentially a human version of the lore of Celestials. It is kind of doing the same thing, but very human focused. It's a lot like presence. It is something that allows you to impart your just raw radiance, your charisma onto other people, get them to pay attention to you, do what you want, things like that. It is supernatural charisma created to affect humans. And for the weakness, the devils, being the first and having such a holy mission, have this guilt charged in them that makes them more willing to just do stupidly selfless things. They are messengers who don't have a message anymore and all they carry is regret and shame. So they're very okay with doing something that puts them in great danger just in the moment. The second that were created were the Asharu, later known as the Scourges. The second house was in charge of the firmament. The biblical firmament is, all right, some religious history time. So the firmament, you might have heard this if you pay attention to flat earth people. It is a dome that exists around the earth. How thick is it? How big is it? Where is it? This is hotly debated. As in, like, in Hebrew scholarship, it is hotly debated whether or not it's like it's as thin as a leaf or just fucking miles thick. It's debated, but the reason there actually would be a firmament concept is really interesting. I talked about this in my Society of Ether video. It is because ancient humans believed that space wasn't a void, it was a substance of some kind. A lot of debates on what. That's what ether is. Again, we're pulling this from biblical, so it's going to be the Hebrew concepts. They believed some that the outside void of space was actually like the solid form of water. Some believe the best way you should view it is actually like when you curdle milk into cheese, Earth being the cheese. But like the firmament has to exist in this old cosmology because they believe that space was a substance. Anyways, the firmament is a thing in Deep with the Fallen, and their job was to make sure the firmament was good, but this also gave them almost like this watchdog looking down on humanity. They were just really close to humans. Even more, alongside their role of the firmament, they were the ones who harnessed the winds, is another biblical concept. The breath of life is something talked about often in the Bible. It is how Adam came to be. God breathed down his nose and he woke up. It's talked about in the Old Testament that like life basically begins when you take your first breath, and that is their charge. They are the ones who actually breathed that into a person, as well as actually commanding the winds. To reflect this, their powers, they have the lore of awakening, which is healing magics and the ability to bring things or people back to life. They have the lore of the firmament. When an angel breathes that life into a person, they are inherently connected. That was the original point of this power. It is essentially your guardian angel. However, how this power really does work in the game, a fallen can have things known as thralls. Another way to put this, they are angelic ghouls with less overt mind control. That's something. This power lets you do extra cool things with your thralls. And then lastly, the Lore of the Winds. Obviously, it's wind powers. Want to do cool wind stuff. But their weakness is because of their increased connection with humanity and watching them for so long and now being among them, a lot of the scourges have very extreme views on humanity, as many of the individuals believe that either every single human being has a chance of redemption and deserves a real shot, or every single human deserves to go extinct and there really isn't any gray area between them. The third house is the Anunnaki. These are the creators and the shapers of the fundament. They are the artisans and the crafters, later known as the malefactors. These are the guys you go to if you want your cool magic items. However, they are one of the most separated from humans, and they are the ones who shaped the world we currently live in and tried to create it for humans to do things. And after the fall, they actually worked with humanity to even give them access to cool new things and help them develop their tech, and watched as humans used all of their gifts to kill and to destroy. This is something that's hardened their hearts, and they're not super big fans of people. Their lores that they get for their house, they have the lore of Earth, Earth powers. You want to meld Earth, you want to meld with stone, this is how you do it. We got the lore of paths, which is a bit of an esoteric, weird one, but essentially it is magic GPS, but with more effects. So like you can create a path because they made paths for humans to tread upon on Earth. And you could say, for example, make a really short path. Or if you have 5 dots, you could say, I don't know, you can make a path that in your closet, in your house, it takes you 5 seconds and you're at your local McDonald's, maybe it's like a mile away or something. And then the lore of the forge. Do you want to make a cool magic sword? Lore of the forge, how you do it. Their weakness is that they essentially have extreme human social awkwardness because they are so separate from humanity and they don't really like humans that much. They are just really confused and struggle to read people and misinterpret their actions a lot, or are just kind of scared and view them as unpredictable. The Nibiru, later known as the Fiends, were those angels that were created to maintain God's plan and all of creation. When people say God works in mysterious ways, there's a plan for everything, you know who are the guys that do it? These fucking guys. It is the Nibiru. And another way I can put this, for the werewolf fans in there, they're like the Weaver. I say this very literally, their symbol is a spider. But for others, maybe less werewolf inclined, anybody who has worked maintenance, oh man, this is so personal for me. You know the feeling that the moment you look away, the moment you take a vacation, the moment you walk away, everything fucking falls apart because you're not there to fix it. That is them. When they fell and after they came out of the abyss, they saw their creation. They spent so much time fucked on the ground in pieces. It's not something they're happy about, but they actually are the most separate from humanity because they spent all their time in heaven. Aramel, for example, he was one of these guys living in this position in heaven and having this monitoring of the world. It gives you this view on like fate and time, because we have like the lore of patterns. Lore of patterns is the ability to read and alter fate and causality. You then have the lore of portals, which, get this, makes portals. Who would have thunk? And then we have the lore of light. This is something they developed once they fell, and it is a power that gives them the power of light. They shape it, they can make illusions, they can do cool light things. The weakness specifically for this house is that they have a problem with puzzles and mysteries and questions. If there's a problem, something, some question, some puzzle, they have to finish it, even if it kills them or the people around them. The Lamassu, or later known as the Defilers. This house was created in charge of the oceans and the seas. As well, they're the Toreador of the angels. They are beautiful, they are artistically motivated, they really care about the beauty and perfection of things, and they have like a mermaid vibe, because like a core reason they fell was because they had this like distant view of humans, but they were also really close because like they would look out on land and see the humans doing their shit, and they were making all this art and this music, and it's basically they had like no audience for the work they did, and they had this like weird just out of arm's reach view of humanity. So they fell for that reason. But a lot of their powers are based around this longing, but also invoking ideas, thoughts, and emotions into people. One of their main lores, the lore of longing, can spark inspiration, or if you have really high torment, it is how you emotionally fuck someone, like completely. The lore of storms is their only way that they could actually reach onto land, Storms, ocean storms, lots of water manipulation. It is storm magic. Pretty cool though. Then lastly, this is something they developed when they fell, the lore of transfiguration. Because it's like a dog chasing a car. You don't know what you're gonna do and you get it. For so long, they wanted to hang out with humans. And the moment they did, they're like, what the fuck do I do? How do I talk to a person? So they developed this transfiguration power because they would rather take the form of other people to blend in. Their weakness is, again, very Toreador. They are prone to flights of fancy, quick obsessions, a lot of like 5 different projects each month of something completely different. And as well, they're very emotionally volatile, dealing with this human's emotions they latched onto. Often they like people who are very vain and self-absorbed. That's the people that appeal to them most. Whenever they're emotionally offended, they lash out real hard. The Rabisu, or the Devourers. These are warriors through and through, and the house to play if you really like the idea of playing a demonic druid, or a heavenly druid. They were in charge of the land, plants and the fauna, the creatures around, and systems of life on Earth. It is their charge. They're also warriors. The fallen versions of this house are much more feral and kind of animalistic, little gangrel. They are the ones who are first to like get shit done and largely break shit. That's kind of their vibe. They have the lore of the beast, which allows them to do shit with animals, control animals, make an animal. They can do that kind of stuff. The lore of the wild, which allows them to do that to plants. You ever want to possess a tree? Can. And lastly, the lore of the flesh. They develop this later on in the fall. They have perfect control of their body, so they can shape their flesh however they want. Nice and horrifying. But when it comes to their actual weakness, they are just mad all the time. They're so angry, they're really impulsive. They are the ones to speak first without considering how it might affect the other person, because they're very brutally honest. And they just want to break things really bad. And lastly, the final house, the House of Halaku, later known as the Slayers. This is the house that is in charge of death. They are the ones who were charged with helping carry the souls to the afterlife. They are like the Grim Reapers. They are the ones who do that transition to death. Created and then like watched as the position they had over humans they loved. Again, it's the parental analogy I'm making, where everyone was fucking terrified of them because that idea of death is a very scary thing to a mortal, and they didn't like how everyone just freaked out about them. A large reason a lot of them fell is just like, I don't know, I want humans to know that I'm not scary. I want them to like me. Then when the war happens, they're really reluctant, but they fought. They fought and they were good warriors. They just didn't like the idea of killing. Because again, that's their entire job. They wanted to preserve life, not end it. However, once they came out of the abyss, they realized they left things fucked, like bad. Human souls were something that were just completely insane, and so they fit that archetype of what I talk about a lot, where they are necromancers, but they're not like summoning skeletons and zombies from the dead. Every game line needs a necromancer, and as such, I like them a lot, actually. I think this is really fun. I like this vibe. This was probably the one I'd play. They believe the best form of harm reduction that they can do with the shit job they left is by being the people to help in your final moments. They're the ones who end the life, and they can help guide you. Now their lore. They have lore of death, obviously. This is a thing that allows you to do things like, you know, help someone pass on, or just, it's insta-kill mortal the power. It's how you do it. You just kill mortals. The lore of the spirit is cool ghost magics, but it is often reliant around the ideas of preserving the soul in some way. So one of the ways that they actually tried to deal with their issues and deal with humanity is by making it so humans like couldn't die, by like making their souls tied to objects and things in the world. Because it's just that moment of like the soul slipping out of their fingers that they really fucking hated. And then we have the lore of the realms. So I said they fucked the afterlife. Lore of the realms is the ability to traverse the Shadowlands and work with this extra dimensional space. It allows you on the surface to do cool ghost things, like if you want to walk through walls and things. They created the Shadowlands. Like, they made Wraith the Oblivion. So, like, all of that shit, if you've played a game of Wraith, it is their fault for everything happening. Their weakness is they're really detached from humanity, just kind of emotionally. They view a lot of the human perspective as just inherently alien. They're also just incredibly stubborn. Now, there are also 2 other powers that are not house reliant. They are essentially free powers you can level into. The lore of the Fundament is that ability to affect physics. It is the way you can buff yourself, make yourself stronger. You can do cool, like run up walls, Spider-Man climb, things like that. And then we have the lore of humanity. This allows you to better communicate, blend in with humans, convince humans of things. It is a power shaped about living amongst humans. I will say, it is kind of like my only issue when it comes to Demon the Fallen, like how its lore is made. I'm not really a fan of the weaknesses. I think some are neat. I like the devils. I think that one fits. It's just like there's a handful of these where I read it and I'm like, I mean, I guess. For the fiends, I wouldn't have their weakness be, oh, they really like puzzles, when it's like, no, they worked like the maintenance job. In the lore, it's written that they're like really pissed about how their creation has been like left to just kind of decay. And that doesn't reflect that. Same with the Slayers. Like, I don't think, they're really detached and alien. No, I would argue their weakness should be they're like hyper empathetic. Their entire lore is setting them up as like, they literally do not like the fact that they are the final thing a human sees. Their only job is killing. Hyper empathy would hit harder. And then lastly, we have the factions. The factions are essentially gatherings of demons who all have like similar ideals or goals for humanity. I can just run you through them real quick. We have the Faustians. The Faustians are real big believers in the ideas that Lucifer Morningstar talked about. They believe in cultivating that divine perfection in humanity. However, this can be like the positive for actually aligning with Lucifer, or they could have some evil schemes and believe it is a way that they can strike back against God. The Cryptics, who are incredibly focused on knowledge, learning the secrets of humanity and of creation that God left. The Luciferians' entire thing is they are the sword of Lucifer. They are very focused on finding him, or whenever Lucifer comes back, which he did in 2005, they wanted to have a standing army ready for him, ready to go the moment he popped his head out. The Raveners are extreme nihilists. They believe that creation itself needs to be destroyed. They have a really extreme, well, we lost, we're taking all of this with us. And then the Reconcilers. These are the ones who are really trying to reach that Torment Zero. They're the ones who genuinely feel bad over what they're doing. They want to experience redemption of some form. Now, I'm not the guy to teach you how to play this game. Mainly, I'm not like a tell you the rules, teach you it. I'm giving you the overview of the setting. There is an element I've seen talked about when I'm scouring. One of my forms of research I do is I try to see what other people think about the game, people who've played it for much longer than I have. A thing I've heard a few times and I've seen around is the idea that Demon the Fallen is a very cool game. Almost like a superhero adventure in WoD because these creatures are so powerful and at a different scale of what we've had in other games. But like, how the fuck do you write a chronicle for it? There are a couple of ideas that book gives you to tell you what you should be maybe trying for. Things like hunting down ancient secrets or artifacts. Maybe you're a demon who's trying to summon your old masters back. Maybe you're a demon that is trying to genuinely reconcile your existence and let go of your trauma. Basically, those factions I view as like, what is your party's goals? How are they going about their day-to-day? But I still think if I had to sit down and write a demon chronicle, I would struggle with it. It's like, I don't immediately have an idea of what story can I tell. I think of the character journey of it, because I think the game sets out a really interesting perspective to try to play around. The idea of playing a Fallen is so interesting to me. I love that idea of the push and pull of your ancient just existence, but now in this human form with human memories and a life, and like you got a job at Walmart, like shit like that. And you're dealing with all this extra supernatural trauma. I think it is such an interesting concept. It is so well done. And for anybody that is really into crossover stuff or having every setting in WoD be together, me, the version of WoD I talk about, Demon's a little hard because like there's no masquerade equivalent. There is like a narrative consequence you could face of, oh no, demon hunters are gonna come after you. Which, speaking of hunters, I actually have a fun screenshot for you knowers. You know, the imbued for Hunter, another old idea for Hunter the Reckoning, was actually caused because the demons got out? That's crazy. Also, exalted crossover stuff for you knowers. But like, there isn't any penalty to revealing your true form, and there are some in lore demons that are like, I'm gonna show myself, I'm gonna rack up my high torment, do all this crazy shit. There's not really a consequence in the game for hiding your true self. So I do think if there are demons that are going to be in your chronicle, I think you should be incredibly limited with it.
Yo, editing Glueboy. I found some information when I'm pretty late in the process, so I had to reframe this ending bit of the video. So there has been a lot of talk, especially in the past good few years, of the idea of Demon the Fallen returning in some way. Now, this is something that was believed for a long time to be not happening in any regard. There's pretty open secret that Paradox and White Wolf with 5th edition had no interest in touching Demon the Fallen. However, literally like this month, got myself a screenshot from WAD Discord, because the devs for 6th edition, I'm not here to legislate 6e talk or drama or anything like that. It's not really my concern. It's something I'll talk about when the game releases for real, but they have at least expressed interest in returning to Demon the Fallen. The screenshot in particular right here is largely pointing out that Werewolf and Hunter need to be done because they're like the biggest sellers besides Vampire. Personally speaking, I'm not clamping at the bit for a return to Demon the Fallen, because I think that Demon as a game is really interesting as a finished, completed product, and I think there's some merit to having a short-lived but just completed thing. I bring that up also because of my point that it's so married to Revised Edition as a concept, that whatever Demon 6th edition, if we do get it at some point, is just going to be very different. Preemptively saying this so people don't get their hopes up for like the same game but repackaged. This game is very early 2000s. Immediately I noticed this when, yo, check out that sick chain wallet. Early 2000s as hell. What I would be significantly more interested though is if we got some form of spiritual successor to Demon the Fallen, something that takes a lot of the genuinely cool ideas, fixes a lot of the weird mechanical jank, but is just different. That excites me way more than Demon the Fallen 6th edition, if I'm going to be honest. Saying that though, you don't got to agree with me. This is just a personal taste thing. If they do release a Demon the Fallen 6th edition, I'm gonna shrug and be like, okay. But that is it. That's the video. So first and foremost, I want to thank all my channel members who make all these videos possible. And I want to give a huge shout out to my top tier channel members. That being Eric Sheriff, Fenris95, Megas Cadron, Pork Chomp, SSJ Werewolf, and Czar Shadow. Thank you all so much. Like, comment, subscribe, join my membership, join my Discord. I gave some fun little promos beforehand about Demon in my Discord, so if you want, like, as I find fun tidbits or fun facts about videos I'm working on, go join it. If you're a channel member, you'll get special roles and a special private chat if you're the top 2 tiers. But anyways, that's the video. See ya.